Democratic Congressman from the 24th District, Michael Arcuri, joins us. Michael, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Can I do a quick bio on you? I always like doing the bios, and I think I get it. It'll be short and sweet. You were born in Utica. You went to SUNY Albany, where you got your undergraduate's degree. And if I'm wrong at any point, or feel free to step right in. Don't wait for me to finish.
Right.
You went out to New York Law School, where you got your law degree. Right. You practiced, came back, and opened a practice in Utica. And served as 13 years as the Oneida County DA, and you've been congressman now. This is your second term as congressman, and you still reside in Utica, which is important to point out because we all like people that don't forget where they come from, so that's kind of a nice thing.
Well, my mother isn't still sure because I grew up on the east side and now I live in South Utica. So she says you're still living in Utica, but you left where you actually were born. But
as long as we still have you here,
that's how I look at it.
All right. Well, let's go back to when you were Oneida County DA. We'll jump right into this, and you worked very closely with local law enforcement, so you really got a chance to see firsthand, what they needed and what went on there. Now, what at the congressional level, do you continue to pursue that? And
yeah, great question. A couple of things that I've done on the federal level to help out in that regard is one is increasing the funding for what we call the COPS grants. As a DA, we were always trying to tap into federal money and state money to help hire more police officers, more prosecutors. So I've made sure that, when we did the stimulus bill this year, that we included in the stimulus bill significant amounts of money for additional hiring of police and firefighters, our first responders. The other thing that I did that I just recently was able to do was, we started working on a project when I was DA for looking at consolidating the 5 police departments in Whitestown. Whitestown has 17,000 people, and we have 5 local police departments, and they're all great police departments, but we were looking at how can we consolidate services to try to save money and improve our ability to respond. So the difficulty there is always do the study. How do we find money to do the study? So what we just did is we just passed the Economic Development Reauthorization Bill. I'm on that committee. And what I did is I put an amendment in the bill to say that we can use some of the federal economic development money to study consolidation of local governments. Here in the Northeast, because, we were the first part of the country that was founded, we have villages, towns, counties, water districts, sewer districts, police districts. And it's very difficult for business to, maneuver through that. And also, we have a lot of overlapping jurisdictions. So we feel that if a communities want to share services or consolidate, we need to provide them with money so they can do the studies to do that. So that's another thing I did on the national level. We've got that in the bill, and that just passed last week.
All right, we're talking to Congressman Michael Arcuri, 26 after 8, 826, and your phone calls welcome this morning if you have a question for the Congressman, 624-0870. Small business is a huge component, a huge part of our economy, a huge part of all economies, and right now, and especially in New York State, maybe not the most small business friendly place in the world. What's being done to make the environment more appealing to small businesses?
Well, one of the things that I always say is, everyone wants to take credit. Everyone wants to say government did it, but actually, business is what creates jobs, not government. So some of the things that we try to do is create an environment for business to flourish, and you do that by improving the infrastructure. I'm on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, so the kind of things that we try to do is improve the ability of small businesses to expand, make a better business-friendly environment. Some of the things that I worked on, it's great. Everyone has sort of forgotten about NYRE. Which is great from our perspective. Well, because we stopped it. But, we can't ever forget about it. But one of the things, don't forget, we were talking about 2 years ago, is that NYRE will drive up the cost of power for our local consumers, especially our local places like Remington Arms, places like Nucor Steel, which is out in Auburn, huge, Guardian Glass out in Geneva, all part of our district. But, energy is so important to them. So by keeping NYRE out, we have helped small business to expand by keeping the cost of power in upstate New York down. The other thing is, remember just about 3 months ago, the Utica paper said, the OD said, the most important issue for business and for our community is our sewers here in Oneida County and in Utica. we've been able to get $38 million, $8 million of which is a total out-and-out grant for the city and the county to make sure that we bring our sewer districts up to speed. I mean, the DEC put an order in place saying that we couldn't have any further development until we had a program to get our sewers in line. That's critical for us. I mean, those are just small infrastructure steps, again, to give small business the ability to expand. Recently, we were able to get legislation passed. We worked real closely with the state to get a piece of legislation passed so that Remington Arms could make a new production. We have been able to get money for Remington. They produce a sniper rifle for our military. But in order to have a sniper rifle, you need a silencer on the end of the rifle. People don't think about that. But New York also has a law that says you can't produce silencers. They mean silencers for pistols, for, snub nose, revolvers, 38 specials. But the bill also applied to those. So we were able to get that bill changed. We worked hard with Dave Valesky, Roanne DeStito, all of our local legislators. We got the legislation changed, and as a result of which, Remington's going to be able to hire an additional 200 people. I mean, you know how important those kind of manufacturing jobs are? 4 years ago we were talking about Remington, we were concerned we were going to lose them, they were going to shut down. Now they're over 1,000 people. I mean, those are the kind of things that you do. You don't change, an economy overnight. It took us a long time to get to where we are now. But on the other hand, you do it one business at a time. And I always think about the fact that it's not so much what your accomplishments, it's your accomplishments in the environment that you're in. You have to look at the environment we're in. The economy is in a tough place. So the things that we're doing, high-speed rail, $150 million to improve our rail. High-speed rail is actually, I think, sort of a bad way to phrase it. What it really is more speed, more reliable rail. And that's what we're working on, to try to get the trains running on time from Buffalo to Syracuse to Utica to Albany and down to New York City. So those are the kind of things we've been working on.
2009, I believe you were named Legislator of the Year. An award that I believe came from work that you've done with seniors. You've done a lot with seniors. It's been a strong cause of yours. You've worked with having sprinkler systems installed in nursing homes, and just kind of toot your own horn for a minute and talk about what you've done for seniors, because really our demographic is a huge part, seniors. So talk about that just a little bit.
Well, one of the things that I think is critical is preserving Social Security, and a lot of what we do is focusing on the fact that making sure that Social Security stays intact. And I always tell the story, my dad used to always talk about the fact that Social Security is one of the greatest programs that this country has known. And he said, he used to kid me about it all the time. I'm proud to pay Social Security, my dad used to say, because it helps me pay back my father for what he did for me. And someday you'll pay your Social Security to pay me back. And best of all, someday your son and daughter will pay their Social Security to help take care of you. It is the safety net. It is what America is all about. So we fought real hard to make sure that Social Security doesn't get privatized, to make sure that it continues and it stays intact. You mentioned earlier the sprinkler bill. A great bill for nursing homes to make sure that not only that they have the sprinklers, but more importantly that they have the funding to put the sprinklers in place. Because it's one thing to pass legislation; it's another thing for the companies that are there to say, well, now we can't. It's expensive to put in some of these older nursing homes, put sprinkler systems in. So we've offered that legislation and we've been pushing it hard. And we've done some other things. We authored another bill. We had a complaint from a local resident who lost her Social Security card, and she said, my number and my name is on there. Is there a way that we can do this so that we can, take the number off the card, or take our number off of some of our cards? So we introduced legislation whereby you can do that. So, we're pushing that, and that's an important piece of legislation, so that the person's, they can't automatically see a person's name and their Social Security card on the piece of on the card. So those are the kind of things, and I guess honestly the thing that's most important is you need to listen. And that's really what I pride myself and I say our office is best at. We listen to our constituents, we listen to seniors, we visit. Yesterday I visited the Citron home, and sat down with a group of seniors and just listen to what their concerns are. Sometimes they want to talk about their children, sometimes they want to talk about their families, sometimes they want to tell you about things that are absolutely important, and you have to listen really closely because you pick up really good important pieces that sometimes generate great legislation.
We're in studio with Michael Arcuri. Your phone calls welcome at 624-0870, 624-0870, 27 before 9. It is 8:33. We want to talk a little bit about the Oneida Indians. And first, let's go to the phone. Mike, actually, there's a pair of headphones there. If you want to slap those on, we'll, all right. Can you hear me now? There we go.
Okay, there you go.
B95.5, good morning. B95.5, good morning. Actually, we'll try that again in just a minute. All right. Let's talk a little bit about the Oneidas. And really, there's a lot of angles to approach this from. First of all, it appears as though their claim for land is all but vanished at this point, and there is a planned appeal. Don't even know if that's going to be heard. But I think the bigger issue right now is paying taxes on cigarettes. Paying taxes at any level or on anything, because it seems as though anytime there's a decision made, that it's either appealed or just rejected at hand. Talk a little bit about that. The date has been set for September 1st for the state to start collecting cigarette tax money. Is that going to happen, or are we going to again, have another appeal, or just just not collect the tax?
Well, I can't speak for what the state is going to do. I certainly hope that they, begin to collect the tax. I mean, obviously, it's important on a couple of different levels. It's number one important because it brings additional revenue in, badly needed revenue to the state and the localities. But on a secondary level, it also levels the playing field. It's interesting because we have some statistical data that we're in the middle of analyzing from over the other end of the district, where the Cayugas, and in one of the counties out there, I think it was Cayuga County, the police and the DA's office went in and they made some raids on cigarettes and that kind of thing with the Cayuga tribe. And what ended up happening is they did an analysis of the sale of cigarettes for the 2 weeks afterward until the court, set aside the thing to see how much the difference in sales for local merchants were for cigarettes and gas, so just cigarettes. And it was phenomenal. And the amount of tax revenue that was realized as a result of that was incredible. So now we have some sort of statistical data in terms of evaluating what is the real, impact that this has both on state and on federal level. And, we don't have it here in Oneida and Madison County. This is strictly for Cayuga. But, it's significant. So that is number one, I think, the first important issue. Secondarily, there's the land issue. And recently I had an opportunity to sit down and meet with Larry Echohawk, who is the Assistant Secretary of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And in fact, I'll be bringing him up in the next couple weeks to meet with local elected officials to talk and just answer questions. He's a great gentleman. We don't always agree on issues, but he's great. He listens. And one of the things that I said to him when we met in my office last month is, I said, Mr. Secretary, look, I understand that there are land needs. We have no doubt about that. The problem is, what do we do as school districts? What does VVS, Vernon Verona Sherrill Central School, do if we're not just talking about what they have now? What if they add more property? I mean, what happens to the tax base? That is a fundamental problem. How do we fund continuing to give land? We're not even talking about the philosophical argument, should they have it, should they not have it. We're talking about how do we continue to fund school districts, town, local, village government, county government, when, we can't do it if they feel like paying it. You can call it taxes, you can call it in lieu, but there has to be some revenue stream in order to do it. Those are the issues we add. And, that is the one thing that the Secretary, when you talk about school districts, everyone always understands it. And I always try to frame it in that light. Say, hey, look, let's just talk about our school districts. What are they going to do if this land in trust goes through and the Oneidas, then ask for more land? I mean, how are we going to do that? So I think those are the fundamental issues we have to answer. 23
minutes before 9. It's 8:37. We are on with Congressman Michael Arcuri, and the phone calls are welcome at 624-0870. 624-0870. B95.5, good morning. Okay. You know what? Maybe we won't do phone calls this morning. Try this one more time. B95.5, good morning. B95.5, good morning.
Yes, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. How are you? Who am I speaking to?
This is Dick Robinson up in Marcy calling. How are you today?
Good, Dick. You have a question for the Congressman?
Question for Congressman. One of the opportunities that we've had in the past options, I guess I would say, in deducting for federal income tax filing. You could either deduct the state income tax or the state and local sales tax. As I understand it, that is set to expire this year, that you no longer can deduct the sales tax. For seniors or for retired people, that's a problem because we all pay sales tax, but if we're not working, then there's not going to be any income tax deduction from an employer. Without that option, it's going to be a situation where most seniors will have to pay much more federal income tax. All of us probably would be looking at a deduction of $2,000 to $4,000 on that sales tax situation. My question is that definitely going to expire? And if it is it possible to reintroduce some legislation into Congress to put it back in?
Great question, Dick. Thank you very much for that. As with most tax deductions like that, we extend them from year to year. Now, we do the same thing with the AMT, which allows deduction for real property taxes. And while many of us try continually to extend that indefinitely, you know, we have a thing in Congress called PAYGO, that's pay as you go. So in other words, any program that you create that spends money or doesn't or reduces taxes, you have to pay for. So the point of that is I think we will extend that. I certainly will be supportive of extending it, and I think we will. But we usually extend that year to year because we can evaluate the cost easier when we do it year to year. Now, that's difficult for individuals because every year they have to hold their breath and hope that it happens. But generally, every year we continue to extend that. We have the very, very same arguments, and I hear about it a lot when we talk about tax policy, creating exemptions, for instance, for alternative energy, for things like wind power, for things like solar power. And we generally create those tax advantages year by year. And very often I hear from the people who do that say, hey, why don't you do it 3 years or 4 years or 5 years so we can estimate what our business plan will be, how much we're going to actually save. And I agree with them. The problem is it's very difficult to evaluate the cost over a long period of time. So it's much easier to do it on a year-to-year basis. So to answer your question, yes, I think we will extend it. I will support it, but it will probably be, a sort of a year-to-year extension.
I have no problem with that as long as it's put back in, because that makes a big difference to those of us who are retired. Appreciate your support of that and hope that you can make it happen.
Great. Thank you. That was a great question. I appreciate it.
Dick, thank you for the call. 19 minutes before 9, it's 8:41, and do we got time for one more call?
Absolutely.
One more call, 624-0870, 624-0870.
I have to try to talk slower. My staff tells me I talk way too fast, so I'm going to try to slow it down.
I didn't pick up on that. I thought you were doing just fine, but I have a tendency to talk fast, too. So
we're Uticans. That's how we talk, right?
Let's talk about an issue that really is not going away, and let's talk about it right after we go to the phones for one more. B95.5, good morning. Who's this?
Good morning. My name is Philip Scampone.
Philip, do you have a question for the congressman?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
I'd like to know the logic in Congress denying 2% increases in Social Security benefits for 2010 and also 2011, while members of Congress voted themselves a raise, and also we seem to find no qualms about sending hundreds of millions of dollars to foreign countries that don't even like us. They outwardly do not like us, yet we continue to be pouring money into these countries, and yet senior citizens in our own country are denied a 2% increase in Social Security. Isn't it about time we start thinking about our own citizens and not saving the whole rest of the world?
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Mr. Scampone. That's a great question. We could honestly talk about the things that you brought up, I think, for the rest of the morning. But let me try to address just a couple of those things. And I'll work it sort of backwards from the points that you made. And forgive me, it'll take me a while to get to your point, but I think you made all very legitimate points that I think people want to hear about. first off, with funding, countries, as you say, that don't like us, and I would say one of the places that you probably are referencing is Pakistan, and I think you're exactly right. We talk about that all the time, and many of us in Congress say, why are we doing that? And then we hear from our leaders, hey, look, if we don't do this kind of thing in Pakistan, we're going to force countries like Pakistan over to the other side, and it's extremely difficult for us to fathom doing it. I mean, I remember going to Afghanistan, and the people in the streets of Afghanistan saying to me, Congressman, let me tell you what we need. We need better water. See our streets are falling apart. We need more money for our streets. Our electricity is terrible. We need better money for our electricity. And I remember thinking to myself, yeah, that's exactly the stuff that my people back home need as well. Why are we spending it here when we could be spending it at home? There's no question about it. But on the other hand, if we aren't doing these kind of things, we're driving the opposition, we're driving, these people closer to the opposition. And it's the most difficult, I think, money to say, yes, we should spend, but we clearly have to do that. Secondarily, with respect to pay raises, I just want to say a couple of things on that. I have opposed every pay raise in Congress since I've been there, much to my wife's disappointment, but I've done it nonetheless. But I've gone one step further on that, and I've introduced legislation that says that we should cut congressional salaries and the money that we have to fund our offices by 5% over the next 2 years. And I'm saying, hey, look, we've asked the rest of Americans to cut back. We need to cut back on what we do. And I haven't just said it, I've done it. So let me tell you what I have done in that regard. Last year, at the beginning of 2010, the beginning of 2009, I said to my staff, look, I want you to cut our office budget. And they said what most of my chief of staff said, what most chief of staffs would say, boss, we can't do it. And I said, you're going to do it. Look, we can spend a little less. Instead of buying 2 computers, we buy 1 computer. Instead of hiring someone, to fill a vacancy immediately, let's wait a month or 2 months and do a few more interviews. Let's save. Well, let me tell you what we did. We were able to save 8% of our budget. We gave back to the federal government, I think, $120,000. Now, that's not enough to end the deficit, but clearly those are the kind of steps that we need to do. After we did that, I introduced a legislation to cut Congress's salary and their what we call our MRAs by 5% for the next 2 years. So I think you're exactly right. If we're going to ask America to do it, we need to do it. We need to lead by example. That is what it's all about. And to get to your point on Social Security, so the reason that the Social Security you didn't get an increase was because Social Security increases are indexed. That means you can only give by law, you can only give a Social Security increase if the cost of living goes up, and the cost of living index did not go up. So the law said we couldn't do it. However, myself and a group of other Congress people led a fight to give actually an additional $250 to seniors under the stimulus bill and under another bill that we have. So you have received that increase this year. Although it didn't come in the way of increased Social Security benefits, you've received that increase as a senior. So we understand that, and I certainly, realize you're on a fixed income. People on Social Security very often are fixed. We need to do all that we can to help them, and all I can do is promise you that I will do everything in my power to make sure that people on Social Security are able to increase. I mean, if you're Medicare reimbursed, it just simply think about it this way. Medicare costs go up, and yet you get the same amount of money from Social Security. That doesn't make sense, and that's why we need to make sure that you're getting all that you can get.
Philip, thank you for the call. 13 minutes before 9, it is 8:47. As we get set to wrap this up, we need to talk briefly about the mosque. As I said, the issue is not going away, and both sides are passionate about it, and that's understandable. Now, from a political perspective, it's very important for you to be on one side of an issue. This is an issue where I can actually see an argument and put up a legitimate argument for both sides. Obviously, there's the sensitivity issue, and that's understandable after losing thousands of people. But then, again, the people that want to build this mosque are not the people that flew planes into the World Trade Center. It's, right. They're for the most part, I'm sure, peace-loving people, much like us. And it almost seems as though a little acceptance might go a long way in kind of bringing us together. Maybe that's the case, maybe it's not. I'm just saying that really you could present an argument on either side. Now, you've taken the side that it's insensitive and probably not a good idea, and that is fully understandable. Just talk a little bit more about your thoughts about the mosque.
Sure, and that's another one of those issues that, is so diverse and so complex. But, I look at it this way, and I look at sort of the couple of approaches that I took on it. One is there are some limitations to the Constitution. I mean, you have a right to free speech, but you can't run into a movie theater and yell, fire, fire. You can't do it. You are allowed under the Constitution to burn a flag. Should you do that? Absolutely not. I think that that is totally insensitive to people who have risked their life defending the American flag. I support a constitutional amendment to ban flag burning. Likewise, I was here, 10 years ago as a DA. I constantly, as a DA, attempted to balance the Constitution, in other words, a person's right, against the rights of a victim and the sensitivities to a victim. I mean, there are certain times, you are always allowed under law to face your accuser in court. However, there are some exceptions to that. If the victim is a child, if the victim is young, if they're unable to, there are certain exceptions that the law makes. So the law recognizes the fact that there are constitutional rights, but there are certain exceptions that should be made for victims. Now, first off, I have to say, I think putting the mosque there is totally insensitive to victims. I just don't think we should. Number one is, I'm an upstate New York congressman. I don't have any real say in this. I think this is a local issue. I would not want someone from New York City telling us what we should do in upstate New York. That's our decision. We live here. We have to deal with it. But on the other hand, people have asked me what my position is, and I feel that, we should be sensitive to the victims. But let's think about it this way. What would we say if the Japanese, right after World War II, wanted to build a monument to the pilots who died, or not even to the pilot, just build a Japanese monument at Pearl Harbor? We would say that's totally insensitive. We wouldn't even consider it. And again, likewise here, it's not like they can't build a mosque somewhere else. I mean, why would you want to put it in a place that offends other people? I don't think it's about so much the mosque is about the sensitivity of the victims. Sure, they could do, but why don't they just say, look, if it's going to create this kind of a problem, we'll move to some other place. I just think I think sometimes we get, that's why I think the Constitution needs to be interpreted, on a regular basis. Why I'm not a strict constructionalist in terms of interpreting the Constitution. I just think this is really, I think, detracting from what the issues we should be considering are: jobs, the economy, here in upstate New York, water, with hydraulic fracking, our sewer problems and everything else. But, I just think it's totally insensitive to victims, and we shouldn't do it.
You've been busy campaigning. It's been a long campaign season for you, yes. And it's winding down, coming to an end.
10 weeks from today.
How many?
10 weeks.
Is it 10 weeks from today? Not that anyone's counting. 10 weeks, 8 hours.
My wife could probably tell you to the minute. I think.
You probably have the big countdown clock going in there.
Yeah, right, like the Boilermaker clock.
In the kitchen. Sure. Okay. So here's what I want you to do as we end the interview today, Congressman Arcuri. I want you to step up to the plate. I want you to hit one right out of the park and say, extend a hand, say, hi, I'm Congressman Michael Arcuri. Here's why I think you should vote for me.
Well, all right. I mean, that's a tough one, but a tough one with respect to, it's always very hard for me to say, here's what I've done and here's why I think I should be reelected. But, I think I've worked very hard for the people of our area. And I think more than anything else, I've listened. I've learned a lot. Being a representative is not about what you know. It's about what you learn. And every day for me is a learning experience. I think I've shown that, I don't work for the president. I work with the president. I don't work for the leadership in Congress. I work with them. I work for the people here at home. I work real hard for them. It's a 24/7 job for me, and I love doing it. And I love doing things that makes people's life. Whether it's helping someone get a passport when they hit red tape, or it's helping a senior, helping a veteran get his benefits. Getting money to $1 million for the Veterans Center in Rome. The hospital, the Mitchell Center Clinic in Rome. Those are things that I think are absolutely important for the people to improve the quality of life. We were able to give $400,000 to improve the St. Elizabeth emergency room. Those are things that touch people here every single day. The creating jobs at Remington Arms. Those are the things that I think are critically important. I am stopping NYRE. I mean, I can't think of a single thing that has more defined what we are about and how we have fought for the district. Today I'm going down to Norwich. We were able to keep a program in place that kept a place of unison in business. 300 jobs in Norwich. Now, 300 jobs in Miami may not be a big deal. Chicago, not a big deal. 300 well-paying jobs in Norwich, absolutely critical. Those are the kind of things we work on. Just try to listen and try to be a congressman that is responsible to his constituents.
You've been very busy over the last 2 terms. You have accomplished much, and thank you for coming in today. Can we get another interview at some point?
I would love to.
And if I ask you on the air, it's very hard for you to say, well, no, Mike, I'd really rather not do another interview. So,
I will definitely. You do a great interview, and I appreciate that. This was enjoyable.
Congressman Arcuri, wish you luck with your campaign.